Alaikum and good morning to all. I'm Marine Kessel, faculty member of Gender and Women's Studies Department, and I welcome you all. Now I would request Ms. Atifa Nasir, in charge Gender and Women's Studies Department, to share conference objectives with us.
Gender and Women's Studies Department was established in 1997 to promote it as one of the learning disciplines in social sciences and humanities. After its inception, the department has been offering postgraduate diploma and master's programs since 2005. The department caters to the need of both public and private sector clientele who want to enhance their qualification in gender-related fields. This conference, which is first of its kind, is devoted to provide a platform to academics, researchers, and students from the discipline of gender and women's studies and social sciences for exchange of experiences, ideas, innovation in doing empirical gender research. As an intricate interdisciplinary research area with manifold topics, it questions the claim of alleged objectivity in social sciences, humanities, and other sciences. This conference is envisioned to provide an opportunity to the academicians and researchers to analyze the perceptions and practices of gender research by employing an indigenous perspective. The objectives of the conference are: number one, to provide a platform to academics, researchers, and students from the discipline of gender studies and other social sciences to showcase their research work. And the second objective is dissemination of knowledge and research findings related to gender studies discipline. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing conference objectives with us. Let me share with audience that the idea of this conference came from our worthy Vice Chancellor. Since he has taken charge of university, he laid special emphasis on construction and dissemination of knowledge and to provide platform to researchers by holding conferences at the university. He has revolutionized the concept of distance education in Pakistan. Now I would like to request Honorable worthy Vice Chancellor Dr. Shahid Siddiqui for the opening remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very respected speakers sitting on the stage, honorable presenters who have come from other cities and from Rawalpindi and Islamabad. I know it's relatively difficult to travel from Rawalpindi. Very dear students, it's a very exciting day for us at Allama Iqbal Open University, because we are embarking upon a very interesting, very exciting journey of research. This is the very first conference by Gender Studies Department, but this is not certainly the last conference. We have decided that this conference is going to be an annual regular feature of Allama Iqbal Open University every year. Next year it is going to be even bigger, and we intend to make it an international conference, because personally I think that this is such a relevant area where we need to construct more knowledge, and one of the ways of construction of new knowledge is through research. And a very important means of dissemination of research findings is a research conference. Almost 3 years back, when I joined this university, my colleagues would remember that we set some targets for this university, and the topmost target was research. And we initiated some new projects like cash awards for publication in accredited journals, funding for presenting conferences, funding for mini research projects. And also, we believe that just doing research is not sufficient unless it is disseminated. And 2 important means of dissemination of research include research conferences and research journals. And we are very proud to share with you that this university, Allama Iqbal Open University, is publishing 12 research journals in 12 different disciplines. And in this less than 3 years, we have organized 22 national, international conferences where we provided a platform to young researchers and to experts to come together to interact with one another. As far as gender studies department is concerned, as I said, this is our first step towards conference. And I think, let me announce this, that inshallah, the first issue of the research journal of gender studies will be out next year, inshallah. And that will be a platform for our young researchers to do their research and share that research with others. Today's topic is very interesting and it's very close to my heart. In fact, when I was teaching at LUMS, way back in 2004, I designed a course, Language, Gender and Power, and that was something very new at that time. And I taught that course for a number of years, and later I wrote a book with the same title, which is published by Oxford University Press, Language, Gender and Power, The Politics of Representation and Hegemony in South Asia. This is, as I said, very exciting area, very relevant to us, because there are these terms. Usually we use them interchangeably, sex and gender. Whereas sex is something which is biological and fixed, and gender is something which is a social construct and which is fluid with the passage of time and from area to area. I think in simple words, I would try to define gender as a social lens through which we view male and female. And this lens is so important, and it varies from society to society, and it varies from time to time. I think the whole issue starts with this binary division. The differences, morning, evening, black, white, and these differences. In fact, this diversity is beauty of our universe. And we must acknowledge, respect, and celebrate this diversity. But the problem starts when a powerful group thinks that white is superior, or morning is superior than evening. The whole problem starts when a powerful group tries to impose their viewpoint, their identity, their liking and disliking, because they believe, as Edward Said calls it, positional superiority. They believe that their culture, their language, their literature, and their way of speaking is superior. Unfortunately, in most of the developing countries, in patriarchal society, what a male does becomes norm or standard. And then the marginalized groups like women in periphery, they are dubbed as, substandard. And this is the whole politics, and we have to, look at this issue from this angle as well. When we say it is a social construct, gender is a social construct, we need to realize the importance of our social institutions, like family, like schools, colleges, and university, where we are working, religion, media these days, because they are contributing a lot to construct gender. And, in postmodern times, reality or identity is not something which is fixed out there and has one version. Now there are multiple versions of reality, and there are multiple versions of identities, and these are considered as fluid. And they are actually made up by this society. So I think it's very interesting to refer to a very important book, The Second Sex, where a very important line is that women are not born, they are made. How gender is made up by this society? First, our society decides roles, different roles for a girl and a different set of roles for a boy. Then our society attaches certain expectations, different expectations from a girl and very different kind of expectations from a boy. And keeping in view these roles and expectations which are actually made up by the society, then this society provides different sets of opportunities, different opportunities for a girl and very different kind of opportunities for a boy. It is very important, these three roles, expectations, and opportunities, because while you are doing this, you are actually making up an identity. For instance, when you see a girl driving a car, and if there is something, some problem, we immediately start saying, they cannot drive. But we need to think deeper. Did we give them opportunities to drive or not? Because that is, similarly, when you look at sports and the kind of exercises, right? So they have a very deeper impact on the identity. Now, these different social institutions which I've referred to, like family, like schools, colleges, university, religion, and media, interestingly, they are using one common tool, and that tool is language. Language in the past used to be considered as something neutral and passive and very innocent. It's no more. Now, language is considered as a very highly political and social tool, which is not just used to perpetuate or reflect what is happening in society, but language itself is involved in the construction of social reality. And all these social institutions are using this very important tool. So language becomes a very kind of potent tool when we look at the construction of gender. Look at the jokes about women. Look at the songs in movies. Look at the proverbs, fairy tales, nursery rhymes. I think if you look closely, it's all politics of representation, and language is playing a very important role. So this politics of representation is very important because this tool of representation is with that group which is powerful, right? I recall Edward Said's Orientalism, where he describes it so beautifully, that how Occident represented or constructed Orient with the help of literature, with the help of novels, etc. So that, what he calls positional superiority. And I recall a very interesting book by Dale Spender's Man-Made Language. Her thesis there is that as most of the physical resources are with men, this linguistic resource is also with them, and they chose better expressions and words for them and slightly negative words for women. So this is a very interesting thesis, that how language becomes a very powerful tool. This, when we say language, let me use another word, discourse, because discourse is actually loaded with social norms and with politics. And this discourse has a very close liaison with power. That, as Foucault says, this triangle, power, discourse, social reality. A certain group of people, they construct certain kind of discourse, they popularize that discourse, they legitimize that discourse, and that discourse leads to a certain reality. a certain social reality. And that social reality justifies all the actions of powerful group. So it's very important that how power and this representation go together. Now finally, I will leave you with this. The point I'm trying to make is that in the modern times, it's the discourse which is a bone of contention. It is the discourse we are trying to reclaim. If you look at the post-colonial movement in literature, this movement is to reclaim the discourse which was with the center, which was with the empire. Similarly, if you look at the feminist movement, again, discourse is very important. So the whole battle is about discourse, because this is symbol of power. And it's very important because, when you control others, there are two important approaches of controlling or hegemonizing. Gramsci calls them civil society and political society. In political society, you use force and coercion. In civil society, we use, the schools, the colleges, universities, language, literature. In other words, one approach is coercive approach that makes use of physical power. The other approach is discursive approach that makes use of discourse. And this discourse is, a discursive approach is more subtle and more effective. Why? Because through coercive approach, you can control the body. But through discursive approach, you actually control the feelings and thoughts. You make others think the way you would like them to think. You make others feel the way you would like them to feel. So, Gramsci uses a very interesting term, spontaneous consent. The discursive approach is so subtle and so effective that even the marginalized group, marginalized groups is in the state of mental surrender. They believe that the language, the literature, the way of living of the powerful group is superior. And they have every right to rule us. And this is the height of hegemony. That is why social institutions are so important. I think towards the end, we should also discuss in this conference the ways of resistance. Because there is, whenever there is control and hegemony, there are always some points of resistance. And these social institutions, which contributed a lot for this construction of gender, the same social institution can be used to put up resistance. Like in colleges and universities, we need to challenge some of the stereotypes which have been popularized, constructed by our society, because the stereotypes are strengthened in two ways. The more you use them, and the second is the legal authority by the social institutions. So, in schools and colleges, we need to challenge these stereotypes. And instead of perpetuating these stereotypes to the next generation, I think schools, universities are the places where, through critical thinking, we develop our students into independent thinkers who are not just accepting what is society telling them, but they should be able to, besides getting a job, they should be able to stand up and challenge some of the taboos of this society. In the end, I would thank all of you who have come from different places, and I hope that these 2 days are going to be very productive for all of us. Thank you.
Now I would request our keynote speaker, Dr. Hazirullah, who is working as the chairman, Department of Sociology, International Islamic University, and he will present a paper on gender equality in Pakistan, myth and reality. He is an expert on gender in education.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shahid Siddiqui Saab, an academician that I always look forward when I'm making a theoretical framework for my research. Dr. Sabagul, Chief Guest, Dr. Samina Awan, Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, distinguished presenters, and dear participant, Assalamu alaikum. I'm thankful to the organizing committee of this conference for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk about gender inequalities. As Dr. said, that it's a very important issue and it needs a very academically sophisticated analysis and understanding. I do believe that gender inequalities and gender hierarchies are a global issue. However, it varies from place to place. The intensity, rigidity, volume of inequalities that are different from one place to another place, and even within a place like Pakistani society. My claim is that gender inequalities or gender hierarchy are not tradition or accidental feature of society. And most of the time they are socially produced and legitimized by state policies and discourses. Rather, I would say, ideological state apparatus, Lois Althusser sense, that how gender identities or gender categories are created and then they are supported through discourses or language by social institution. Ideological state apparatus mean how education, family, religion, and media play a role to reinforce and reproduce these hierarchies in identities. The argument that is there, that some women, like some people, believe that Pakistan has gone a long way and we are now having a greater gender equality. And my presentation would be something that people will call me as pessimist, or some may call me as optimist. I'm not going into that debate that where the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. You will decide later on whether the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. Some women in the public domain or some women in the parliament or approval of the Women Protection Bill, for me, is not going to address gender issues in the larger society. For that, we have to work on micro level, day-to-day language, power, and gender. In the politics that exist in the micro level, in the family, in school, and all kind of text of media or education, etc. My assertion is that we must take into account gender as a structure issue. And we need to have a very sophisticated feminist analysis and academic understanding of this issue. And I hope this conference will lead us toward that goal, or to some extent sensitizing us toward that sophisticated analysis. The key term that I was planning to talk about in this presentation was gender. I'm thankful to Dr. Saab that he made my work easy. Gender inequality, this is women lack of access to resources as compared to men. Gender order, the way we make the binaries and then we make all structures and how these structures are benefiting and privileging men and disadvantaging women. Privileges may start from wealth, income, prestige, and that can go on to a lot of extent. And the same way, disadvantages can be disrespect, and that can lead to physical violence and all kind of other discrimination. Hegemony, it was explained very well that how men maintain their hegemony in society through discourses. I would explain that with examples. Gender language, we already talked about how language is gendered, how men construct language, how they choose word, how they make various kind of titles or good and bad definitions. Discourses, that's clear in focus sense now. Knowledge power nexus, that was also explained, so I will go further. What is our commitment? Like, gender inequality exists around the world, and gender reforms, gender policies are also there in the world. In the global north, in the Western countries, there may be on advanced stage. In our countries, they may not be on that advanced stage. Our commitment exists since 1947, when Qadi-Azam made this clear. You can read the statement that no nation can rise to the glory unless your women are side by side with you. We are victims of evil custom. It is a crime against humanity that our women are shut up within the four walls of the house as prisoners. There is no sanction anywhere for the deplorable condition in which our women have to live. You should take your women along with you as comrades in every sphere of life. 1944. In addition to that, we have constitutional commitment to gender equality, and that constitutional commitment is Article 34 of 1973 Constitution of Pakistan asserts that steps shall be taken to ensure full participation of women in all spheres of national life. That means women have to be made part and parcel of the public domain. Our international commitments are the Beijing Platform Action, forward-looking strategies for the advancement of women, CEDA, Beijing Women Conference, Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, and many more. Despite all these international and national and constitutional commitment, where do we stand? We stand at 143 out of 144 countries when it comes to gender equality. There was 2016 analysis. I'm not going to highlight the entire public domain where gender inequality exists. I would just share some glimpses of the public domain, how gender inequality or access to public goods and services or resources exists. Banks, universities, legal system, political and parliament, army, and media. Look at the banking sector, how it is a male-dominated patriarchal domain. Out of the total 23 banks in Pakistan that we have, 19 banks are headed by men. Chief executives, president, and other top level management, that may be director generals or that can be other directors, they are men. Only 4 banks are headed by women. The names are given there. Women bank is particularly for women, so we can exclude that. The remaining 3 banks, UBL has recently appointed a woman as the CEO and president. Now, this is one area that we have extreme inequality, that business, banking, or management is considered as men prerogative. The gender university, look at Pakistani universities, higher education institutions are degree awarding institution. The number may differ because HEC sometimes give approval to certain university and recognize them, and sometimes they just kick them out of the list. Out of the 177 universities, 163 universities are headed by men as a vice chancellor. Only 14 universities are headed by women, and mostly these universities are women universities like Fatima Jinnah Women University, Shaheed Benazir Bhatti University, Peshawar, etc. And if you look into the universities professorship, dominantly, not only in Pakistan, around the world, the number of professors, associate professors, and assistant professor of men is more as compared to women. So we can say that higher education, particularly in terms of job, is a very gendered institution. Despite the fact that contemporary women or girls, they are outperforming boys in all levels of educational examination. And if we look into the gender courts, the court system or the judiciary, out of the total 130 judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, only 7 are women. Today, no woman has been appointed as Chief Justice of Supreme Court or any provincial court, High Court. Similarly, we don't have a female judge in Islamabad High Court. Since 1947, only 1 woman was appointed as president of the Law Bar Association or the Supreme Court Bar Association. Gender in Parliament, we claim that we have achieved a lot in terms of political participation, but if you look into the statistics, that's very amazing that we have a lot of women in the Parliament, But these women have not, in the parliament on their own, are winning the election. They are there on reserved seats, dominantly coming from a well-established political background, selected by their male family members on reserved seats. To cut it short, if you look into the statement that has been passed on by one of the political member, that women reserve seats encourage this trend because party had dominate female relatives of those they want to reward. Now, what they do is to fill in those gaps, they just appoint some women in those vacancies on reserved seats. On open merit or open competition, they are rarely winning election or coming to the parliament. If we look into the media, which is very popular currently in terms of female employment, we don't have women in top management. They're not in the decision-making bodies. News agency, Association Press of Pakistan, APA, have not yet had a women director general. Since its inception, Pakistan Television, PTV, has had only one woman as DG. News content is essentially determined by all male boards. Women are missing from the top tiers of the media organization. Despite the mushrooming growth of media houses over the past decades, the number of organizations owned by women is negligible. A recent report, the CRGMP reports, found that male participants of the study argue that women are bad decision makers. Women are physically and mentally weaker than men. We still believe in that biological differences between men and women. If we look into the debate in the West, after 1990, there is a crisis of boys' underperformance. Where goes the intelligence? Boys are performing poor as compared to girls. And this is happening now in Pakistan in terms of educational performance. So if intelligence is associated with biology, that means we have to rethink of that, because gender issue is not only about women, it's also equally about men. In the Western context, the crisis of manhood, masculinity, fatherhood, boys' underperformance has started, and there's extensive research and debate over that in the global north. Gender army, if you look into the organization of army, around the world, army is a very male-dominated organization. In Pakistani army, there are induction, but if you look into the number, we have 4,000 women in army. Dominantly, they are in medical profession, nurses, or some other medical doctors. We don't have them except few pilots and other people in ground forces. My conclusion is, what I believe is, that the overall conclusion that I reach from this research is that gender hierarchies and inequalities are not tradition. We have created that, and we can alter that by developing counter discourses, counter narratives. Examples, how we create gender inequalities or how we construct identities, as it was said that language is not neutral, language is not free of value, it is very much political, it is very much biased, and it is ideologically invested. If you look into this text, this is not coming from a newspaper. ये मेरी अम्मी है, ये मेरी अम्मी है, मेरी अम्मी उस्तानी है, वो गांव के स्कूल में पढ़ाती है, वो घर के सारे काम भी करती हैं. Now this is coming from a public school textbooks which is attended by 72% of the total population. Now around the world, 88% of school teachers are women. KP government has recently passed a bill that was putting female into primary school teaching. Now, why they are not in the university? Because from day one, you are telling them that the ultimate place for your job is school teaching. Now, looking into the discourses in the picture, it's not just about school teaching. ये मेरी अम्मी है, मेरी अम्मी उस्तानी है, वो गांव के स्कूल में पढ़ाती हैं, वो घर के सारे काम भी करते हैं. If you are going for a job, remember you have to do all the domestic chores as well. Coming back from school, you have to prepare lunch and clean the house and wash the dresses and everything. This is your responsibility, because with the university job, this is going to be very difficult because you have to invest a lot of energy and research and all other conferences in making your career. If we go for the language politics, how it is ideologically invested. वो गांव के स्कूल में पढ़ाते हैं. Like for the university job, you have to go away from your village. Now for the school teaching, you're not supposed to go away from your village. So this is how the language politics, as Dr. Saab said, that language is full of politics, and we have to identify that politics, and we have to sensitize children about that politics as well. So 3 major ideological meaning exists, that women are supposed to be in the school teaching, they're not supposed to go beyond their villages for jobs because वो गाँव के स्कूल में पढ़ाते हैं और वो घर के सारे काम भी करते. That means when you are going for a job, you have to be responsible for the homemaking and the household chores. If you deconstruct that with Michael Apple ideology and curriculum, because this is coming from textbooks, Michael Apple is one of the American sociologist of education or educationist. He's a critical theorist. He says that curriculum, textbooks, etc., they're full of ideologies. They're ideologically invested. The people who write books, the people who design books, they approve books, they have their own politics in that. And we can see that if you go back into the Ministry of Education or textbook board, you see who are designing and approving these books. Now this is a very simple advertisement that people may ignore. Allied Bank advertisement hai. Talim Bachat plan for boys, Shadi Bachat plan for girls. From day one when they are born, you just think of them as somebody to marry, and you think of their marriages and their jahez and everything, and you think of boys as somebody who are going to make career in the public domain. So if this is the phenomena from day one, how can you compare or put them into competition and say that boys are good or girls are good? Moving beyond that, if you look into the radio messages or television messages, आज आपका बेटा फर्स्ट आता है, मस्ती कम, मेहनत ज़्यादा करता है, कुछ बन के दिखाना चाहता है, और कल आप उसकी कॉलेज फी पूरी नहीं कर पाओ तो क्या ये सही होगा? This is a message disseminated to the people on television as well as on radio. Now deconstructing it and connecting it with the previous message of the textbooks or the billboard message, that how boys are made for careers or men are made for career in the public domain and girls are destined for home and homemaking. उसके साथ ही दूसरा मैसेज जो आज आपकी बेटी बड़े फरमाइशें नहीं करती, आपकी पसंद का ख्याल है उसे, और कल आप उसकी शादी पे कोई कसर छोड़ो, क्या ये सही होगा? Now connecting that with this message, what we see, the ultimate place of a woman is to get married, produce children, make a family, and be responsible for the house chores. And we put men into that place where they have to be prepared for the public domain and make their careers. Now this is the language politics. This is how language is ideologically invested. Now look into this, like it was said that sports, how sports is a gender phenomena. Now we see 4 kinds of sports over here, girls with that traditional exercise, and boys in all those open field. This is coming also from a school textbooks. Now, this is communicating a message that for the girls exercise, home is the best place. You can do that in kitchen as well, or in bathroom as well, if there's a big bathroom. But for the boys sports, you have to go outside in the ground. You need playground and space. Space and time is one of the major issue in gender studies. As one of the resource, it's one of the privilege that some people can get and some people cannot. Choti ki pehli goal roti. This is advertisement of wall ice cream. Now, a small family and a small girl coming with the mother, making a small goal roti, it is celebrated while the son is sitting there on the table with the grandfather, and they just celebrate and clap everyone for that. Now, this is from the day one, we are training them how making a goal roti. Roti is a roti, it is goal or ungoal, matlab that can satisfy your needs. So it's not necessary that we should stress on the goal roti and then making a small girl's goal roti celebration, because this is telling the larger audience that making roti is the female activity, whether the mother or the daughter. Now we think of this, we should decide whether the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. For me, the glass is half empty. There are people who can take the half water and be happy with that, and there are people who can just look into the empty space and be uncomfortable with that. I believe that for the sophisticated understanding, we have to, for the scientist, new as well as the established academician, we have to revisit social constructionism versus essentialism. Knowledge power nexus, we rarely teach them in the universities, and that is important for the gender analysis. Hegemony, ideological state apparatus, discourse analysis, and critical discourse analysis. I'm not going to make any numbers for that, but Michael Appel, Antonio Gramsci, Michel Foucault, Les Althusser, Dorothy Smith, some people who want to really have a good, sophisticated analysis may go for reading these authors and then coming up with gender analysis. And you can read these authors in a very simple and easy manner in the book Language, Gender, and Power, The Politics of Representation and Hegemony in South Asia by Dr. Shahid Siddiqui Saab. He's sitting here. I have gone through it more than 5 times, and I read it all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing really informative paper with us. Now, I would like to request our chief guest of the event, Dr. Sabah Gul Khattak. Dr. Sabah Gul Khattak is a big name in development sector, and apart from that, she is great feminist, an academician, and political scientist.
Professor Dr. Shahid Siddiqui Saab, Vice Chancellor, AIOU, Professor Dr. Samina Awan, Dean, AIOU, Dr. Hazirullah, Department Chair, International Islamic University, Ms. Atifa Nasir, in charge Gender and Women's Studies at AIOU, respected faculty, students, guests. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor. Actually, I was very surprised. I've never been a chief guest at a conference, so I'm very flattered. Today's listening to Dr. Siddiqui was like music to my ears. Some of you know I come from a research background. I identify myself primarily as a researcher. So to have someone give research the status, the recognition that it deserves and that we need to have in our country, in our society, was really, really a pleasure. Dr. Hazirullah's research, his paper sort of encompassing the entire gamut of gender inequalities and how they are both structural and linguistic, was of course educational for me, for everyone else, I'm sure, because it lays the larger map, the backdrop within which we operate. Yesterday, a dear friend and fellow researcher, Nazish Brohi, wrote an article in the newspaper, which today I kept revisiting as I heard both the speakers, and it was called What's in a Word. It starts with actually the color blue, and she writes about how the color blue is not present in ancient languages, whether that is Greek or the ancient Hebrew Bible, or Chinese stories, or Icelandic sagas, or ancient Hindu texts. The color blue is not there. And then another researcher who was looking at language patterns discovered that actually in most languages the colors black and white come first, and then later on the language develops yellow, green, red actually. It starts with red and then yellow and green, and then blue enters, even in Greek, blue enters many centuries later. So, and I kept thinking, I went back to my first language, and in that often, my first language is Pashto, and often we refer to the sky we call it the word green, the word that's used for green. We say shin asman. Shin is green. We don't really use the word blue for, although the word for blue does exist. So what is it? Were people or are people color blind? No, they are not. But language gives recognition to a certain phenomena. And so then, of course, Nazish goes on to discuss the word rape and how in Urdu there is no specific word for the word rape. And so dealing with women, because the language does not recognize it, and there are other words that describe it, but there's no specific word, zabardasti and so on, but there is no specific word that indicates sexual violence. So language and recognition and the power invested in it and how that sort of recognizes a particular phenomena or does not recognize it is very interesting. It is not only about gender, because she started with the word blue. So it's about how we recognize a phenomena, with how it exists and how we accept it. Similarly, the word gender, I remember when gender studies departments were being set up across Pakistan in the early 90s, many people spoke about what is gender and how do we translate it, and should we have a program in gender studies or women's studies. And I'm so glad to see that over here you have both gender studies and women's studies. And when I first started my career here at a place called SDPI, we had a debate around it also, and I insisted on having women's studies, a program on women's rights, because I said, gender will dilute the whole issue of women's rights, because eventually, although gender had come as a very radical concept within academia from French feminists who challenged the whole binary of sex, yet in Pakistan I saw that development discourse and our donor experts had twisted gender, taken out the edge, and sort of made it into a very presentable concept so everyone would accept it. And they said, well, gender is non-threatening, it just means difference, and men are different to women, and then that led into the whole debate on equity and equality. What is it? And then you bring religion into it to say that equity is what we need, not equality, and equality is really taking it to an extreme. But then you get into the whole constitution, and the constitution tells you are equal as citizens, that there will be no differentiation on the basis of sex. But then you get into the whole dual legal system of Shariat and your constitution, where whether you are, as a woman, you are equal or not becomes a very problematic area. And I feel that a lot of the debates in Pakistan sort of taking from where Dr. Siddiqui and Dr. Hazirullah stopped in terms of language and power and structures, I'm sort of coming to the structure aspect of it, how laws then get structured based on how you perceive the world around you, what gender roles need to be, and how that then gets structured into laws, into the public arena, into jobs, what kind of jobs ideally women should have, whether they should be more inside the house, in the public sphere. All of these become issues right from the word go, whether a girl should be put in school, can she receive education, can she receive education beyond a certain point, beyond primary, beyond secondary, beyond college, university, and so on. These battles continue to rage, perhaps not in the center where we are in the cities, but definitely much more so in our rural areas, in the areas that are away from the center, where the state and its apparatuses do not reach as effectively. So, for instance, in Balochistan, where your per capita cost of development is much higher than in a densely populated area, because the distances are so huge. You have Balochistan's underdevelopment, classic underdevelopment, where your health systems cannot reach the remote villages because the cost of getting vaccine to that village in Turbat from Quetta is very high compared to the cost of getting a vaccine from Islamabad to Rawalpindi or within ICT. So these then become the barriers also. So there are the structural barriers that range from our perceptions and our cultures to the barriers that are there in the delivery of the services, social services by the state, which are the state's responsibilities. I can go on and on and on about these issues, but starting from law to what Dr. Hazirullah pointed out about banking, about not just banking, actually financial access of both men and women is extremely low in South Asia, but particularly in Pakistan. I think Hamara financial access to banking and so on for ordinary people is below 15%. That includes men. For women, I think it's maybe 4%, and that's after Benazir income support scheme was introduced. So because of that, a lot of women were registered in banks. So the point is that it is extremely difficult, and there are glass ceilings, but then there are areas where women do excel, as in academia, when we see results of, say, metric. Even from tribal areas, girls are sort of outdoing boys, and that of course is creating a lot of anxiety among many people also, including women, because I serve on the KP Commission on the status of women over there. One of the women members was extremely concerned that there are so many girls coming into university, so many more girls outdoing boys, and what is going to happen to jobs, how will boys get jobs. So, well, I did tell her that she needs to be in a different commission, not on the one that we are on, but these are general concerns and anxieties, and how do you address these issues? So I hope that the research that Dr. Siddiqui has emphasized, I hope that the issues that Dr. Hazirullah has brought up within these contexts and within the deliberations of your conference program, these issues will be discussed not only in our context and not only in the context of, say, Pakistan as a country, but within its own specificities. So gender equality may have a better sort of ranking in, say, Islamabad compared to, say, FATA. So within the same country, how can we have different laws that govern different contexts, where, say, in FATA, the people of FATA who are citizens of this country are not equal citizens, where the FCR still is applied, although formally speaking it isn't supposed to be. So the inequalities even regionally across our country, whether in Balochistan or southern Punjab or interior Sindh, how do we address them effectively? And sometimes, you just need a small tweaking in the law to make things work. So what is it that can work? What is it that we can learn from our neighboring countries, from the other parts of the world, how have they addressed the issues? And, by coming together, exactly what Dr. Shahid Siddiqui said, international conferences, research that is shared, ideas that are shared, by coming together we can learn from one another and go back and get into implementation. We had the Women Protection Bill, it changed a little bit that women cannot be kept in thanas overnight, and that completely brought down the issue of assault against women in thanas. So, just that one small bit of change in the law addressed a huge problem for us. So there may be small things that we can do which can change, have a larger context of change in it.
नुमल से लोग तशरीफ़ लाए इस्लामिक इंटरनेशनल यूनिवर्सिटी से। मेरा ख़्याल है और मुझे यकीन है कि अगले 2 दिन हम इस सेंसिटाइजेशन की तरफ अपना पहला कदम रखेंगे। मैं इस डिपार्टमेंट के बारे में ये कहूँगी कि although the body was weak but the soul was very strong, so they made it possible। और looking forward to see a research journal, क्योंकि already यूनिवर्सिटी में पिछले 2 साल में हमने 12 तहकीकी जर्नल्स जो हैं वो निकाले, उनको फ़रोग़ दिया, और पूरी उम्मीद के साथ कि वो रेगुलर जर्नल्स होंगे। इनमें से तकरीबन जो हैं वो HEC से अप्रूव्ड हैं। अगेन आई वुड से कि हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी और इसमें सोशल साइंसेस के जो डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं वुड बी द हब ऑफ रिसर्च। एंड सबा गुल खटक साहिबा, ये यूनिवर्सिटी अगले कुछ सालों में आपको एक बेहतरीन रिसर्च यूनिवर्सिटी की तरह नज़र आएगी। और जितने भी आपने टॉपिक्स हमारे लिए आज जिनकी तरफ इशारा किया, मुझे यकीन है कि ये जो हमारे ज़हीन चेहरे स्टूडेंट्स के सामने बैठे वो इन पर काम करेंगे। प्लीज़ एंजॉय फॉर नेक्स्ट 2 days और हमारे लिए और अपने लिए बहुत दुआ कीजिए। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Now I would call Ms. Aklim present bouquet to our chief guest and keynote speaker.